Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to the stream. We've just gone live, and I don't have any lights on. So I'll be working on that in just a moment. In fact, I think you're hearing me, but I don't have my headphones on either. Just a little bit slow getting started today, but everything is working perfectly. Here we go with some light. There we are. All right, got some light. Let's change the website so that it shows at the top of the page that we are live. I think I've got a chat here. Need to open the chat up. If I can see it. Right, I need to be invisible. I need to open the live event chat. There we go. Let's clear that out. All these little things. Here we go. I like it. Let's hide, make that a little bigger. Put that over here. Very nice. Let's put general chat over there. Oh, let's change our, oh, that's the wrong thing. I want this right here. Let's change this here. All right. Now we're getting somewhere. Security plus study group. And we'll put that in the chat here. And we'll change our promo bar that says my security group is right now. Click here to join us. And it should go to /live. Burp, burp, burp. Reset the cookie. Save the changes. All right, all right, all right. Let's see if anybody's actually in here. That would be good to know. Yes, there you are. Hi, everybody. All right, let me put my headphones in because I don't even know at this point if you're even... I can see visually that you should be hearing me, but what do I sound like? Who knows? It's a mystery until I get the headphones on. So let's do that. Let's get this all plugged in. They go behind me and around, and they're all twisted up. What has been going on here? They would be all twisted up. Oh, all kinds of things. All sort of things. Whoops. Oopsie. Where's this cord? Got caught on the underside of my chair. Let's do this. That's better. All right. Hello, Louisville. Louisville. Rather. I got to get that right. All right. And now I can hear myself. I need a little more audio so I can really hear myself. That sounds lovely. Oh, I need to start the recording. Let's start her up. Start. Recording is started. Recording is started there. 2 recordings in the room. That comes in handy sometimes. This is squeaky. I'm going to turn this off for a second. That's a little bit better. So it doesn't squeak in your ear. And I need to do quickly the podcast intros. Bear with me, please. I'm James Messer, and you're listening to the Professor Messer Security Plus Study Group. This study group was recorded on June 21st, 2017. If you'd like to watch a video replay, visit my website at professormesser.com. And the next one. I'm James Messer, and you're listening to the Professor Messer Security Plus Study Group After Show. This study group was recorded on June 21st, 2017. If you'd like to watch a video replay, visit my website at professormesser.com. And that's it. All right, let's do a camera check, shall we? Here, hi. How you doing? How you doing? I need to put something on this screen for the camera check. We'll put up just a thing right there. There's my script for my Security Plus study group. Be good if I could put something on the screen that was actually useful, like the bird feeder. Something. There's no birds though. And then the fourth window. Do I pop up here? I do. Here's me. Oh, you can't see me there. There's me. Huh. I don't have my DDR set on that. What's DDR1? Now I'm going to have to do some stuff. DDR1 is here. And do I have, can I touch a thing? Is it not working? Oh, that's weird. Ba, 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 ba. Ba, 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 ba. Da, 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 da. Well, things are streaming properly, but my mouse is working. Now I've done something. I have managed to make this so it will not respond to me. But that's okay. Let's see on the live page, did I put all of the links to the stuff? It's a good question. It's a valid question. No, I did not. Let's change that. Let's put links to the stuff, shall we? Hit the right page. See if it edits properly. Keynote is up and working. Do I have, there's the links to the studio line and to the QA. So that will be there. That looks good. And update that page. So if you did get on the live page and you don't see the links to professormesser.com/QA or the phone number, you can refresh and it will show those. And we're going live here in about 2 minutes. 2 minutes. I'm not ready to go live, am I? I guess I am. I really wish I could fix this problem, but it is just not going to take. Oh, wait. It's mousing over now. Now, see, it's working now. Let's see if I can make this work here. This should have, at the bottom of the screen, oh, I wonder where it went. A lower third. What? Where did it go? I don't even know where I put them on my screen. You probably can't even see the things I've got going on. Oh, I may have deleted it accidentally. Yep, I sure did. It's an accident. Did not mean to do that. Oh, wait, here's some stuff. No, that's not it. That's not it. Them's not thems. Nope, that's not it either. That's not it. I could make one real quick, but we've only got a moment. Can I get to my trash here? Probably can't. Not easily. I could get down into the thing, but we're not going to do that. But it's working, so there's worse things. And we got 30 seconds, so we're going to start this thing anyway. Oh, there we go. Those are working. What else do we need to do? Is there anything? Oh, I need to put my pinpoint up so you can see the yellow marker on the screen. Let's get that ready to go. Okay. I think we should do a thing, don't you? Won't this be great? Let's do it right now. Let's get this ready to go. And there we go. No, that's not it. That's not the one. It's this one here. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the June 2017 Professor Messer Security Plus Study Group. It's the study group that I do every month. This is the Security Plus flavor of it. Last week was Network Plus. The week before that was A Plus. We try to fit 3 of them in every month. I'm going to ask you questions that would be topics from the Security Plus exam, and we're going to see if you can answer them. I've got a live interactive setup so that you can go online and you can see everything that's going on. You can answer the questions. We can see what the answers are that you put in for the questions. We'll talk all about that in just a moment. We're able to do these study groups thanks for your support for that. Some of you know that you can watch every minute of every one of my Security Plus videos online right now by going to ProfessorMesser.com. But of course, you can purchase an offline version of this as well that has not only the videos with closed captioning, they have MP3 version, so you can put it on an audio-only device and listen as you're driving, for example, and my course notes come with this. We'll talk about the course notes in a bit. If you'd like to learn more about that, you can find it at ProfessorMesser.com/GetSecPlus. I want to thank you always for your support. You can always watch what we're doing on all of social media by typing in ProfessorMesser.com/ that social media name, /Twitter, /Facebook, /vouchers. That's not social media. /vouchers is where you can get a 10% discount off your Security Plus or really any CompTIA voucher. You don't have to pay full price. Instead, go to ProfessorMesser.com/vouchers. If you're a student with an EDU email address, you should be going to the academic store. Search for the academic CompTIA store, and you get a much bigger discount than my voucher discount. And if you're a student, you could probably use that, right? Instead of eating ramen and drinking water, you can, of course, do that instead. Save almost 50%. It's like half off. It's a great price. So if you're a student, make sure you check into that. There are also pop quizzes online I give away for free. You can find they're really what I've done in these study groups. I've been doing these live events for years, and I take the questions that I do and I put them into this Q&A format online. So you can find all of those at ProfessorMesser.com/pop quiz. There's hundreds of questions there from A+ and Network Plus and Security Plus. It's a nice place to find a little Q&A just before you take your exam. I also make a podcast version of this study group. You can, of course, watch this study group replay immediately following at any time on YouTube. But sometimes it's nice to have an audio-only version. You have a podcast app that downloads the latest version. You can find out where all those links are, ProfessorMesser.com/podcasts, and you can listen in on all of those as well. Might be useful to have that there. There is, as I mentioned, live Q&A today. So you will be able to follow along and find out what's going on with the live Q&A. You'll be able to answer online. You'll be able to see if you get it right, how many people are answering those. If it's a fill-in-the-blank question, you can fill in that blank on Socrative.com. There's a quick way to do this. If you're on a browser, you can go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA. Takes you right to the place. But you may want to download the Socrative student app. It's available on almost any platform. You can download that student app on your mobile device, and then you can input the name of the room, which is Professor Messer, all one word, ProfessorMesser. So all the rest of you that don't have the app, just go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA, pop open a new window, and you'll be able to answer the questions right there. Be able to have that there. So that's something fun to do. In fact, I have a question there right now. If you're able to do that, if you can follow those directions, this is your first test. Can I see the question? Here it is. Where is the best place to take a summer vacation? It's a fill-in-the-blank question, granted. That's one that can, of course, get you to where you need to be. This fill-in-the-blank question itself is obviously not a Security Plus question. This is a test question. Let's see if you can at least get into Socrative and see this question. If you cannot see this question, then you're probably in the wrong Socrative room. You want to be in the room Professor Messer, all one word, ProfessorMesser. Getting some great answers on this. This is obviously fill in the blank. I can't pop up a list of the answers that are here, but I'm getting some pretty good answers. Boulder, Colorado, the Black Hills. Somebody in, South Dakota? North Dakota? Outer Banks, North Carolina? San Francisco? See anybody put down my favorite one? Disney World. There it is. Somebody's put down Disney World. Savannah, Georgia. That's an awesome place to visit. And fantastic food. Hawaii, Japan. I love Japan. I love Tokyo. I think I stayed in Yokohama. It's really nice. Across the bridge there. Colorado, another great one. I need to get back out to the mountains. And the reason I mentioned the best place to take a vacation is that today's the first day of summer. Can you believe it? June 21st is when we are recording this live. You can always find out when we're doing a live event from the calendar on my website, ProfessorMesser.com/calendar. But I can't believe today's first day of summer. It's come along quickly. I say this, of course, because I'm busy working on a ton of projects right now. and it just flies. It is just going so fast. I almost wish it would go a little bit slower to have that there. But of course, that's one of those things you can't control. There's just a certain number of days in the month, hours in the day. You can't get away from it. We're going to talk about Security Plus today. I do realize I give the link 10 times, and I don't give it enough because people don't seem to catch it. So I will give it even more. You're going to hate it by the end of this, I promise you. But by the end of this, you also know a lot of Security Plus information. The latest Security Plus exam is the SY0 as we record today on June 21st, 2017. It was released on April 2014. It will be retiring in October, so of next year, of July of next year. So this same time next year, you will still be able to take the current version of the Security Plus exam. So a lot of people see that an exam is soon to be retired or that a new version is suddenly appearing, and they think that they should wait. You should never wait to get certified. You should take the current exam right now. Keep studying. You'll be able to take the current exam until next year in July. Plenty of time to study and take this exam. So it's pretty important to have that information and know about it because you do have plenty of time. There is a new version of the exam that is coming out in October. October the 4th, 2017 is when CompTIA says that SY0 will be released. So you can see there's 9 months between the time they release a new exam until the time they retire the older exam. So it's nice to have that. They don't just make you stop studying and adjust everything, which is good because the new 501 exam is very different than the 401 exam. It's almost half the information's brand new. So you're going to find a lot of differences on that exam. This is only referring to the version of the exam you take. The certification you get is exactly the same. So if you take the SY0 you get the Security Plus certification. If you take the SY0 you get exactly the same Security Plus certification. This has nothing to do with the certification you earn. It only has to do with the version of the questions that you get. So that's the important part to keep in mind as you are looking at this. The exam itself is 90 minutes long. You can get as many as 90 questions. It might be fewer than that, but it will not be more than 90 questions. The passing score is a 750 in a range of 100 through 900. It is intentionally obfuscated by CompTIA. We really don't understand their grading system. They don't tell us what the grading system is. Every question appears to have a different number of points. You really can't study and think I need to get a certain number of questions right because you aren't ever quite sure. All you can really do is do your best. And ultimately, if your score comes out to be over a 750 or over that, then you're absolutely going to get a passing grade. This is a multiple choice question, and it includes what CompTIA calls performance-based questions. So you may be asked questions about that are fill in the blank. There are multiple choice. There are matching questions. There are some that you're putting in a certain order, ascending or descending. There can be all kinds of questions that they might ask. It isn't just multiple choice. Usually these performance-based questions are right at the beginning of the exam. And I generally tell people to skip over them because you're not really ready to take those questions yet when you start your exam. The adrenaline is flowing, you're pumped up, you're not even reading what's on the screen yet. Go through all the multiple choice, then maybe circle back. I think the multiple choice will help jog your memory for some of the things in the performance-based questions. It's my particular strategy. You might want to try something else. That's completely up to you. On these live study groups, I like to ask you the first question as a performance-based question. So here it is. This is as if we're sitting down for the exam and we get a performance-based question first thing, and it is one where we need to match these different things. Oops, I did not want to finish that. I wanted to click that. Now you can see it on your Socrative side, and it says, match the following data states to the type. Each state is associated with 2 data types. So you can see I've got 3 things on the left: data in transit, data at rest, and data in use. And then I have 6 things to choose from on the right: MySQL database, decrypting credit card data, Ethernet frame, validating a credit card PIN, daily tape backups, and a WAN connection to a remote site. And I want you to match these together. So if you think that they're all in the order that you would normally find them, it might be 1 A and B, 2 C and D, 3 E and F. I didn't make it that easy. So you're going to have to figure out, there's 2 of these for each one, 2 letters for each number. So it's 1 A and B, 2 C and D, 3 ENF. That might be your answer. And that's what I want you to put online in Socrative, is to figure out what those are. It's difficult in Socrative because Socrative is really designed for fill in the blank or multiple choice. It's not really designed for these matching. So I'm trying to make it matching, but I'm also trying to make it easy for you. You could say 1A, 1B, 2C, 2D, 3E, 3F, whatever makes sense to you to be able to put that into Socrative. This is a pretty good question because it does deal with topics from the Security Plus exam. As I go through these questions today and I explain the answer to the questions, the exact exam objective number and the name of the video that I have in my video index associated with that will be listed. It'll be at the bottom of the screen. So just look for that. And that way, if you're wondering, where did that come from on the exam? There's the objective. Here's the video. You can go right to it. And if you miss it, you can, of course, rewind later and have a look at those and figure out where those came from, because that might be a little more of a challenge to figure out those pieces. We're getting some answers in. Some of you are trying to figure these pieces out. Now I'm looking at how you guys are doing with this one. Some of you are doing really good with this one. Some of you are spot on. Some of you are putting in different order. So I'm trying to transpose. You're doing the letters first and then the numbers. So yeah, you're doing pretty good. A lot of people understand the concept of this, thankfully. Some of you are kind of catching on to what they could be. So we're going to talk about why these are these different states, why they're important, and where these data types came from. So everybody locked in their answers. You can't phone a friend on this one. You can just lock it in. I've gotten 40, 46, 47 of you answered so far. No Googling. You can't Google this. And don't answer in the chat room. Now, nobody's answering this one in the chat room, but as we go through this today, you don't want to answer in the chat room, which you'll find at professormesser.com/live in the live event chat. So let's see what the answer is. Here we go. And there they are. I kind of scrambled up these different options. So data in transit can be considered an Ethernet frame and a WAN connection to a remote site. The best matches for data at rest would be a MySQL database and daily tape backups. And data in use would be decrypting credit card data and validating a debit card PIN. And that is how I would categorize all of those as well. I think that's a pretty good representation of a data in transit, a data at rest, and a data in use. And this is why. A data in transit, as the name implies, it's data that's moving. It's in motion. It's going from one place to the other, usually over a network. It doesn't always have to be on a network. You could say that data that's on a computer bus, it's on the cable going between the motherboard and the hard drive, could technically be data in transit or data in motion, but we most commonly see this on the network. That's where the bad guys are trying to get the data. They're going to hook onto the network in some way to get that. The problem is that it's really easy to tap a network. It's exceptionally easy to get data off of a network, relatively speaking. Relative to the other methods we were talking about, networks can be very easy at times because they very often will leave your facility. They go outside the building, and you have very little control over what happens outside the building. One of the best things you can do, of course, is to encrypt the data. It's not always a foolproof function when you're dealing with network security, but it helps a lot of the time when you're doing those things. Data at rest is one where the data is sitting there on a storage device. Usually it's on a hard drive or an SSD or a flash drive. It's just sitting there. Nobody's doing anything with it. An application is not using the data. The data is not being pulled into memory. It's being stored, and later on we'll access that data in some way. That's why a lot of organizations will encrypt entire drives. That way, if you use a USB and you lose it, it's okay. The data on that USB is completely encrypted in a method that would be very difficult, if not impossible, to reasonably decrypt using the methods that we have today. So you can really do pretty well with that. Usually you can also set permissions on this too. If it's on an online storage device, we can restrict people's access to it until maybe the application needs it. And of course, data in use. That's the third piece we were talking about, where the data is now, we're using it. It's being processed by our systems. The CPU is accessing that data. So for the CPU to access the data has to be in memory somewhere. And you really can't act on data unless it's in memory. We can't do anything if the data is being stored on a storage device. We have to pull it off the storage device, put it into memory, and at that point we can do something with it. Data's, in that case, has to be decrypted. The CPU and the application can't understand it unless it is first decrypted and able to use by those applications. So it's a perfect place for bad guys to pick out the information that's inside of it. In fact, that's exactly what the bad guys did in 2013 when they got into the Target network. Gosh, was it that long ago that they got in and they put malware on the point of sale terminals? So you pay for something at Target, the terminal that was sitting in front of us had malware on it. And as the credit cards were being processed, the credit card transactions were being properly encrypted across the network. But of course, the point of sale terminal had to process it. So the malware grabbed it right there on the point of sale terminal and collected millions and millions, 110. I think it actually went up from there from the time I did this slide, but 110 million credit cards is quite a lot. It was just sitting there automatically gathering them, putting them in a file, sending them off to the bad guys every night. And they had all of these credit cards, including mine. Mine was part of that breach, and it's out there on a website. I can search for it. I can find my credit card number. People can purchase it, and they can use it somewhere else. It's remarkable. So if we looked at those three different things, if I back up in our list, let me back up to the answer that I had here. That was the answer we were looking at, was that we have data in transit, indeed, Ethernet frame, and WAN connection to a remote site. That makes sense. Data at rest would be on a storage device like a database, the MySQL database, and daily tape backups. And data in use is where we are decrypting credit card data or validating a debit card PIN, perhaps on a Target point of sale terminal. In fact, yes, there's somebody saying it was that months later, Home Depot was hacked. Same exact attack. It was a very similar attack. And in fact, my credit card got taken in that one as well. Isn't that great? I had like that year, and also that year we had I think it was Cigna or some California healthcare company was also breached. All that personal information was taken. I got hit by that one as well. So got that one three times in just a couple of months. The letters just kept coming in. We're here. We're informing you that your private information is just now out there, owned by the world. But that's the way it goes. Let's do another question. Let's hop over to one dealing with third parties. Your organization has entered into a partnership with a third party. Which of these would be the best way to provide network connectivity between the two organizations? And finally, I have some multiple choice here. So this one's going to be a little bit easier. Don't answer in the chat room, by the way. You want to instead have a look at these possibilities and see if one of these is the right answer. Should you install a separate WAN circuit for the third-party network traffic? Should you create a server in your DMZ for partner access? Should you configure an IPsec tunnel to the third-party firewall? Should you use separate computers for partner communication? Or should you build a separate network core for all partner communication? One of these would be the best way to provide network connectivity between the two organizations. Maybe you know what the answer is. And if you do, you can answer it at professormesser.com/QA and be able to know what could that possibly be. I'm going to sneak a peek as you're doing this so I can see what the different options are that you're working through in your mind. I try to get this so that half of you can get this one right. I also try to make it, if you want to look at it from another perspective, that half of you get this one wrong. My goal here is to make these difficult enough that we're actually learning something at the end of this. So this might be something we go through to figure out how can we get these answers for this. Maybe there are a few of these that you can dismiss immediately. That should be something you should be able to do, not just here, but on the actual exam. Which one of these answers should I throw out? And that's going to minimize now the options and maybe maximize your opportunity to get this one correct, even if you don't know the answer. And if you don't know the answer, just take a guess. On your exam, if you don't know the answer, take a guess. Never leave a question blank. You are not penalized for getting a question wrong. You obviously don't get any points for that, but they don't take any away. So it doesn't hurt you to try to answer as many questions as possible. Let's see how we did with this one. Your organization has entered into a partnership with a third party. Which of these would be the best way to provide network connectivity between the two organizations? And we've got a number one, 58% of you said C, configure an IPsec tunnel to the third-party firewall. We got almost really a tie for second. Create a server for your DMZ, in your DMZ for partner access, or install a separate WAN circuit for the third-party network traffic. And hardly anybody chose build a separate network core for all partner communications. That was only 5%. And 0%, nobody said use separate computers for partner communication. Now, why wouldn't we just use a separate computer? Yeah, that doesn't make sense, does it? That's a difficult one. Let's talk about this then, why we would do this. This happens all the time, by the way. An organization that you've been talking to, you've now worked a partnership out, maybe you've acquired a new company. I used to work for a company that did third-party communications, third-party call center communication, so we answered the phone for third parties. And you can imagine all of these different third parties. We had to create network connectivity to all of them and make this work. One of the ways you can do this, in fact, this is probably one of the best ways to do it, is to first come to an agreement of where the data is going to be. Usually you have some data at the partner site, you have some data at your site. This makes it a little bit more of a challenge. So you need to create some type of network connectivity. This network connectivity, of course, needs to be secure, almost always. There's probably never a time when you would never want to secure this. And a good way to do this is to create an IPsec tunnel. IPsec, of course, extremely secure. You can set up even additional security features inside of IPsec, things like certificates, so you can make sure that nobody is going to do that. And it's an easy way to set it up. You can literally set this up in minutes because almost everybody has a firewall. Almost everyone's firewall will support VPN and IPsec VPN specifically. And all you have to do is call the technical person at the other side and say, here's what we're going to do. We'll NAP between each other. We'll set up the IPsec. Here's maybe a certificate or a shared passphrase that we can use, and we'll get the tunnel up and running. And immediately now we have access to each other's network. We can set up firewall rules. We can tell you where to access the different resources. It's such a simple and a very quick way to get things running that why wouldn't you do it this way? And in fact, that's the way most organizations will do it, is simply set up an IPsec tunnel and you're up and running. It's so simple, it's so easy, it's so quick. So let's look at the other answers. Obviously, if you answered C, configure an IPsec tunnel for the third-party firewall, 57% of you got that one correct. Now, why wouldn't you create a server in your DMZ for partner access? Well, that wasn't the question. The question was, how can I provide network connectivity between the two organizations? I'm not trying to set up a server. I will probably have some servers that the client will access, but I've got to get a connection to the third party first. You have to somehow get there to the third party to be able to make that one happen. And that's probably, although a server is something you probably want to do, that wasn't the question. I want to have network connectivity. So here's a good one then. 15% of you said install a separate WAN circuit for the third party network traffic. Done. Finished. That was easy. That's not easy at all. That is far from being the best way. If you've ever gone through the process of purchasing and installing a wide area network circuit, it can, at a minimum, take 30 days, at an average, take 90. And sometimes you run into problems with that, where now it's taking even longer than 3 months to get a network interface in. And then you've got to pay a lot of money for the separate WAN circuit, and it's just not a very common way to set up connectivity between a third-party site. And between all the choices you have, certainly not the best way to do that, because that was the question, the best way. You're going to see that on your exam, by the way, all the time. It's going to ask you for the best answer. And you will probably see in the list of answers, there's many different ways I could do this. In fact, this is a good example. You could choose A or C, and it would create network connectivity to the third party. But only one of these is going to be the best way. Make sure you keep that in mind on your exam. You obviously would not build a separate network core for all partner communication. Generally, that's never done unless this is some other type of weird, super secret communication. And using separate computers for partner communication, nobody does that either. Not really something you would go through either with communication to a third party. And that's why C is the best answer. Configure an IPsec tunnel to the third party firewall. Let's do another question. Let's shift gears now and talk about honeypots. Which of these would be, in which of these would you be most likely to use a honeypot? And I have some options for you. Would it be to A, quarantine all executables sent as email attachments? Would it be B, encrypt all data on a hard drive? Would it be C, block all email that is received without a digital signature? Would it be D, validate DNS information before connecting to a third party? Or would it be E, gather information about network attacks? In which of these would you be most likely to use a honeypot? And maybe you will be able to answer this question by going to professormesser.com/QA. Remember, do not answer in the chat room, and being able to work through that. This is one where whenever I start looking through the questions available, in fact, in the chat room, people are going, what's a honeypot? Well, that is the question, isn't it? Is figuring out what that is. Whenever I start looking at the exam objectives, you will find a lot of things on there that you've never heard of before. And I think that's one of the things I run into as well, is that there's a lot of topics on the Security Plus exam. It is an extensive exam. The course notes themselves are like 35 pages long that I created, some of my largest course notes. That's when you really run into trying to figure out all of the different techniques, the terminology. There's a science unto itself. Security has its own set of words and phrases and things you need to know that's very different than the networking side of things. So in which of these would you be most likely to use a honeypot? Let's see how we did. And you can see 85% said gather information about network attacks. Certainly not hitting the 50% of the things that I like to work through. But maybe that's the challenge, of course, is finding the right thing. Some of you, though, did say 8% quarantine all executables sent as email attachments. You've got 6% said block all emails that are received without a digital signature. And a tie for fourth is encrypt all data on a hard drive and validate DNS information before connecting to a third party. Well, gathering information about network attacks is certainly something you need to know. And if you look at the exam objectives, it's objective number 3.7. And I have it in my video for assessment tools, where you have to know both honeypots and honey nets. And just like honey, this is the way you attract creatures, bears, other things out in the wild. You're trying to attract bad guys onto a fake machine. This honeypot is something that you've set up with maybe something that looks like honey, but does sort of become a little bit more of a challenge to get that there. So this is one where you will find a lot of logging. You're tracking exactly who's hitting it. The question is, what do you do with this information? Does this help you understand where the attacks are coming from? Is it used for research? There's a lot of things you can do with both honeypots and honey nets. Honey nets are a group of different devices, either real or virtual, that you would set up and be able to use. It certainly gives you an opportunity to set up a web server and a database server and other devices, at least virtual devices, and be able to use those. You can find a lot more about honeypots at the Project Honeypot at projecthoneypot.org. It's a great place to go to learn all about, very interesting to find out the details of honeypots. And of course, I didn't fool anybody with that question. 78% of you did answer E, gather information about network attacks. You did not answer C, block all email that is received without a digital signature. There are ways to do that with email gateways, but not with honeypots. That's not what you would do with a honeypot. 9% said quarantine all executables sent as email attachments. Again, very commonly done on either next generation firewalls or email gateways. And then a tie for fourth was encrypt all data on a hard drive. Has nothing to do with a honeypot. And validating DNS information before connecting to a third party also does not have anything to do with a honeypot as well. So this is one where now we know a little bit more. If you didn't get that one right, now you really know what a honeypot is and a honey net. There are so many different topics on the Security Plus exam. I've taken all of my videos. There's about 250 videos for the Security Plus exam. And I've taken all of the data from all those videos and I've collapsed them down into a single document. It's a way that now everything is on one PDF for you. And I can tell you also, not only one PDF, but I now have, or at least this weekend, I will have available for you a physical version. There'll be a real book that is Professor Messer's SY0 401 CompTIA Security Plus course notes. That is something you could actually purchase. And when you buy the physical book, you get the digital version along with it. It's one of those, and being able to work through it. The course notes themselves, I'm going to I've got the PDF on my screen right now. Here's the introduction. Here we go. There we go. We've got more of the course notes now on the screen. I've just taken every bit of text, all of the graphics, all of the tables, all of the images, everything that is in every single one of my videos. And of course, every single one of my videos has all of the objective information from there you will find in these course notes, and they're only $10. This is a way that you can also help support what we're doing here. My videos are available for free, but I have to have some way to keep the lights on and keep the servers going, keep the load balancers up and running, keep the reverse proxies operating, all of these things as well. Some people say I would like to donate. I don't take donations. I like to give you something for the money that you're spending, and you can do it for only $10 for the course notes. The printed version is probably going to be quite a bit more. It costs a lot to print on paper and ship this. So you'll probably see a price somewhere around $30 or so. It may be a little bit more than that after I look at printing costs just to purchase this, but it does come with the digital version. So it's kind of a twofer. Really, it's a little bit more of a bonus to have that there. You can find out all about the course notes at professormesser.com/securitycn and be able to do that. The Security Plus course notes are there, and you can see all about them on the Professor Messer website. Thank you for your support. Thank you for the people that have already purchased it. It really does go a long way to keep things going around here. I could not thank you enough. In fact, keeping things going should be what we'll do next. So let's go to the next question, which deals with XSS. XSS. I'm not sure where the emphasis is on that syllable, but we'll go with the question of which of these would be the best way to prevent XSS. Well, of course, we need to know what XSS is in being able to work through this. I have some possibilities, though, that might help you if you don't know what it is. You can add an ACL to the firewall. Option B would be to reject embedded scripts in application input. Option C would be to use a separate database to audit all application transactions. Option D would be to keep all workstation antivirus signatures updated. And option E would be digitally sign all application transactions. One of these would be the best way to prevent XSS. And maybe you know how to prevent it. This would be the best way to make that happen. You can, of course, go to professormesser.com/QA to answer this question. Be a great way to do it. Have there. This is an interesting question as well, because there's a ton of topics dealing with these security technologies on the exam that you don't need to know necessarily. You, of course, do need to know the name of what this is. You need to know what XSS is, but how do you use it? What is it? Is it a thing? Is it a technique? Is it an attack? Is it a prevention of an attack? Is it something in motion? Is it something in, what is it? I want to know what those things are. So maybe you know what those things are. And if you do, you can answer at professormesser.com/QA. Again, no answering in the chat room. You want to be able to go to professormesser.com/QA and answer this one. I'm going to take a sneak peek while you're doing that and see how we did. What it would be the best way to prevent XSS? Well, 78% of you said it will, you reject embedded scripts in application input. Is that what I would have chosen? Maybe. I'm not sure. Let's look at the other possibilities. Almost a tie for second between three of you that said digitally sign all application transactions, keep all workstation antivirus signatures updated, and add an ACL to the firewall. And then in third place is use a separate database to audit all application transactions. That is absolutely a good way to prevent XSS, one of those certainly. But let's talk about XSS and what this is. There's the cross-site scripting is what XSS is, cross-site scripting. Cross-site scripting, why don't we call it CSS? Well, that's because the CSS is commonly, that term's commonly used for cascading style sheets in HTML. So that CSS was already taken. So XSS is the one we use to really differentiate that from a security perspective of somebody trying to attack an application using a cross-site script. In my video for this, which is section 4.1 of the exam objectives, video name is Secure Coding Concepts, I do a demonstration of cross-site scripting where I attack an application, and just by using some escape code, some simple typing into my keyboard, nothing fancy, I type some characters into my keyboard and I'm able to access a database that normally I should not have access to. This is whenever we talk, cross-site scripts are really bad because you have access effectively to a large group of information that's in a database somewhere that you were not supposed to have access to. There's a different kind of attack that's not dealing with this question, but you can certainly go back to the video and have a look at cross-site request forgeries, which are another type of attack that are similar but not the same in being able to do that. I think whenever I do start looking at all the different attacks, and there are a ton of them in the Security Plus exam objectives, you of course need to know what all of those are. So make sure you have a look at what all of those differences might be. So being able to type something into my keyboard and suddenly have access to a database that I should not have access to is a very bad thing. And usually it is a script that's doing this. Sometimes it's me typing it in, but it's very commonly a script that somebody's embedding inside of a web page, and rejecting embedded scripts and application input's a good way to do that. 74% of you answered B, and that would be the correct answer. We don't usually stop cross-site scripting on a firewall with an ACL. There is very commonly a cross-site scripting prevention in a number of intrusion prevention products, and next-generation firewalls can certainly do that, but they're usually done in a different process than an ACL. ACLs are very simple. They don't usually handle looking for things like a cross-site scripting attack. Using a separate database to audit all application transactions, well, it's too late at that point. And separate databases adds more complexity. That's not very commonly done to find and prevent XSS. Usually the best way to prevent it is to make sure you don't create code that allows it. It's really a coding problem. It's a programming issue. So you need to prevent it from the very beginning. Answer D was to keep all workstation antivirus signatures updated. Antivirus doesn't commonly look for cross-site scripting either. This is something that's done on a server. Something that's on your workstation obviously isn't going to see something that is attacking a server. And digitally signing all application transactions, you could digitally sign all day. The script can use a digitally signed application transaction to do this. So that's not necessarily going to prevent a cross-site script either. Clearly, the best answer here is B, reject embedded scripts and application input. And 75% of you agree with me for that as well. So well done. Nice job in getting that one, working through those. Can you stop cross-site scripting using a web application firewall? In that case, that would be a good way to block a cross-site script, because a web application firewall is validating the input that's being made into an application. It's that second line of attack. You, of course, want to program and develop the application well, but if you don't have a good application, that's something that can help you prevent somebody from putting bad input into an application. So WAF is a very good example of a way to prevent a cross-site script. You guys are already thinking about these things. Well done. Let's go to the next question. We've got more here. And the next question deals with authentication factors. Do we know what authentication factors are? Well, I hope you do, because I am asking you which of these would be the most common authentication factor. Now we got to think about that one for a bit. Now, would it be something you know, something you have, something you are, something you do, or somewhere you are? All of these, of course, are authentication factors, but one of these is the most common authentication factor. Maybe you happen to know what that is, and if you do, I see a number of you already typing in your answer for this one very, very quickly. Nobody has to Google this one. Hadn't really thought about that. So which would be the most common authentication factor? Go to professormesser.com/QA if you would like to answer this question. In the chat room, people are saying, is that fuzzing? Am I fuzzing if I'm doing a cross-site script? Probably not. Fuzzing is when you're just blowing up a machine with all kinds of junk you're throwing at it. Not really blowing it up. You're looking for the application to do something weird. You're just feeding it all kinds of randomness to try to make something happen. Cross-site script is a very directed attack. You're performing a very specific function inside of a screen. If you look at my video, I will show you. I type in very specific things to gain access to that database. Very good way to do it and being able to work through there. That's one where you do want to think about. So looking at authentication factors, we've got a few here that we can choose from. Some of you think this one's too easy, but is it? Is something you know really the most common authentication factor? 76% of you said yes, but 12% of you said something you have. 7% said it's something you are, 4% said something you do, and 1% said something you are. You put it right in that order of those different authentication factors. This one probably isn't too hard. I probably did make this one a little too easy, but authentication factors is a pretty big part of the certification exam. It's very well written out. You have to know what those differences are between all of those. So maybe that's the one we have to know, is the differences between all of these. Sometimes people get hung up on, is it something I know or something I have? It becomes a challenge to do that. And something we know is clearly the most common authentication factor. Knowing your username and password. Those are things you know. They're not something you have. You don't have a username and password. It's not place you are. It's not somewhere you are. So it's not geography. It's not GPS. It's not something you're doing to create. That's not something you are. It's not a fingerprint. It's not an iris. It's not a handprint. It's one where you have to know a username and password. It's something you know. It's a bunch of letters and numbers and characters, and you're putting it into the screen, and then you have to remember it. A PIN is a good example of something you know as well, a personal identification number, and having that there. Having something you know in your brain that you can then put into a prompt is a very common and the most common authentication factor, because it's really something that's very specific to you. Nobody else knows that but you, unless you tell them. It's in your brain. There's no way to get it out of your brain unless you're the one that does that. And I think whenever I start looking at all of the different options, authentication factors and all those other things, that becomes pretty important that I know these. Make sure you go through the list of all of those authentication factors that are in the exam objectives, because those exam objectives have everything you need to know for the exam. If you're one of the folks who did answer A, something you know, 76% of you got that one absolutely right. Now, also on the exam is a lot of information that would be nice to be able to do. One of the things I tell people, it's good to watch the videos, make sure you read a book, but get a lot of good hands-on. Well, the challenge, of course, is not a lot of people have a lot of good hands-on with IPsec tunnels and setting up encryption and doing the symmetric and asymmetric encryption types. It'd be nice to have a lab available to do that. And my friends at GTS Learning have exactly that. They've created live labs to be able to do this. The live labs, you can find more information about these, by the way, at professormesser.com/seclabs. You're using actual equipment. You're using real information. And it's something that is a live machine. It's not a screenshot or an emulation of a lab. You're using actual Windows and Linux devices, connecting them together, using IPsec tunnels between them, and doing it in real time as if you were doing this on an actual network. Well, because you are on an actual network. You don't have to have any special hardware. You don't have to have operating system licenses. You don't have to have a bunch of equipment to set up. You go to a browser screen. And from that browser screen, you're perfect. You're good to go. You can do everything you need from that browser screen. There's a special price available as well. If you go to the GTS Learning site, it's $169. But if you follow my link to get to the GTS Learning site, professormesser.com/seclabs, you get a special price of $109. They've discounted it heavily for you to be able to get the best price on being able to get some hands-on to help you through those performance-based questions on your Security Plus exam. You can find out all about this and much more on the GTS Learning site. Follow my link, professormesser.com/seclabs. You don't need anything special. You follow that link, you automatically get the discount. And I want to thank the friends, the folks I know, those great people at GTS Learning. Talk to them all the time. I wouldn't work with them unless I like them and I like their products. And this is a very good example of that. professormesser.com/seclabs. Let's do another question. This one dealing with WPA2. And I'd like to know which of the following would be most associated with WPA2. Would it be RC4? Would it be SSL? Would it be AES? Would it be TKIP? Or would it be SSS? One of these would be most associated with the WPA2. You're probably aware on the exam that WPA2 is well represented on the exam and the operation of WPA2. Now, if you don't know what WPA2 is, well, you've got other challenges here. Just take a guess. at what this one might be, but one of these would really be most associated with the WPA2. You do have to know all of these crazy acronyms on the exam. And this is a really good example of having to know crazy acronyms and being able to work through that. Whenever I start looking at all the acronyms and the things you should know, this is one that you really do need to know. Understanding WPA2, it's such a well-used technology. You absolutely need to know WPA2 to work through these and have all of these accessible to you. Whenever I look at the different answers, this is probably a couple of these you could immediately get rid of. You can remove them and really make sure whenever you start working through these, okay, it's not that one. It's not that one. It could be one of these. You know, try to get it down to a very minimum and working through these pieces. Maybe you know what these are. So let's see how we did with this one, WPA2. Which of the following would be most associated with WPA2? Well, 68% said AES, but 22% said TKIP. My last study group, the one that came in last on the last question, was the one that was actually correct. So I'm waiting for this to happen again. Is this the one? 7% said SSL, really a tie for last. RC4 and Triple DES tied for last place with 2% of the vote each. So which one of these would be the right answer with WPA2? Well, if you're familiar with the way WPA2 operates, then you know it relies heavily on AES. This is the advanced encryption standard. This is probably one of the most popular encryption methodologies being used today, mostly because WPA2 is one of the most popular encryptions that are used on our wireless networks. WPA2 uses a series of different options. There's so many different ways to implement AES, and WPA2 uses a few options to be able to make this work. WPA2 is the first wireless encryption to use AES. And when we were using WEP, we were definitely not using AES. And WPA was the intermediate before we implemented WPA2. And WPA did not implement AES. It was really WPA2 that finally did implement AES. So that means that those of you that did answer C, the advanced encryption standard, you got that one absolutely right. 67% of you got that one right with AES. It would not be TKIP. That's what we used in WPA. And the one that would not be used in WPA2. 7% said SSL, which is definitely not used with anything related to WPA or WPA2 or WEP for that matter. This is RC4. That's what we'd see with WEP back in the WEP days to be able to encrypt data. RC4 was one of the methodologies in use along with some others, and Triple DES isn't used at all with WPA2, WPA or WEP indeed. This is one of the really interesting parts about wireless technology. It really changed a lot, and you need to know the differences between how these wireless technologies operate at security level for the Security Plus exam. On your exam, you will probably get some wireless questions, so make sure you know about those. If you're watching these videos to get continuing education unit credit, you're someone you already have your Security Plus exam, maybe you have your Network Plus or A+, this would qualify for continuing education units for those as well. Then you need to follow these instructions to be able to send me a request for that. You need to go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. There's a Contact Us link at the top or the bottom of the website. You want to click that, and in there put your name, your email address, put that this is the June 2017 Security Plus Study Group, and that the special keyword of the month is AES. That is the keyword of the month, AES, to be able to tell me you must have watched this because you got to this point in the video, you were able to understand the instructions I gave you, and you have to follow those instructions. That's part of doing this. And then I will send you back an email that tells you must have watched this. I certify that you indeed did watch this, and that's good for 1 hour of webinar-based continuing education credits that you can use towards a renewal if that's how you plan to do your renewals for Security Plus. There's a lot of ways to renew Security Plus. You don't have to use continuing education. That's a good way to do that is is to use continuing education. A lot of people use those, and I get a lot of requests for that. So I'm more than happy to send those back. It takes me about a week to reply to those. You can earn this whether you're watching this live or whether you're watching a replay. You can go back and watch all of my replays and just send me one email that says, I watched 10 replays. Here are the 10 the special codes that I got from each one of these months. And I will send you back a certification for 10 continuing education hours, which I think is the maximum that you can do for Security Plus. It's a smaller number for Network Plus and A Plus. You'll have to check the CompTIA website for more information. We got time for more questions, so let's get through a couple more. This question deals with FCOE. Which of the following would not be associated with FCOE? Which of the following would not be associated with FCOE? Would it be A, database sizes exceed 2 gigabytes? Would it be that B, remote users access the database across the WAN? Would it be that C, the storage system is connected with both fiber and copper? Would it be D, drive sizes vary across systems? Or would it be E, drives will store long-term backups? One of those would not be associated with FCOE. Maybe you know what it is, and if you do, you can go to professormesser.com/QA. to be able to do that. Maybe you know the answer. And this may be a little more difficult to figure out. Stop Googling FCOE to start with. You need to think about what that technology is, how you would implement that technology, whatever FCOE is, and be able to work through those. Maybe you know what the answers are, and you could, of course, go through all of those pieces. Please don't answer or put any hints into the chat room. I'm going to be able to work through those. This is one where you get a lot of questions like this one on the exam too. So make sure that you check the exam questions, you look at all of the answers, you try to remove the things that aren't quite right in your mind and be able to answer that question. A little bit slower on this one. I think a lot of people are thinking this one through. Normally I can see the numbers rotate up very quickly. On this one, not so much, which is why I'm telling you not to Google it. Because I know when people are Googling things, I can see it. I can feel it. I know the numbers when they're moving up or that way. Let's see how we did with this one. Which of the following would not be associated with FCOE? Well, we're a little torn on this one. Didn't quite get to 50%. 35% of you said the storage system is connected with both fiber and copper. 25% of you said remote users access the database across the WAN. 16% said database sizes exceed 2 gigabytes. 13% said drives will store long-term backups. And then 12% said drive sizes vary across systems. So double digits across the board. So it's a difficult one to try to figure out which one is really the most popular. We didn't get a majority on this one. So let's talk about FCOE. Maybe that will help us answer the question. FCOE is fiber channel over Ethernet. Fiber channel, of course, a technology that is a topology unto itself, but it's also a set of protocols. And fiber channel over Ethernet is using those fiber channel protocols over an Ethernet network, kind of combining two things together to make that work. You don't need any special FCOE hardware in a device connecting to an FCOE switch. You can simply use the Ethernet that you already have in place and be able to connect to these fiber channel devices. It's usually you already have fiber channel in place, and that's why you're now somehow interacting the Ethernet network and the fiber channel together to make that work, and it works great. Well, one of the things that is a challenge is this is really a layer 2 communication protocol, and you can't route to a different network with fiber channel over Ethernet. If you were to route to a different network, you wanted to route to a different network, you would use something like fiber channel over IP. IP, obviously, a layer 3 protocol. I can put fiber channel within the TCP/IP communication, and I could route that one. So I could send it across very geographically separate areas. It's one of the nice parts about using fiber channel IP over fiber channel over Ethernet are some of those communication differences. So if we go back and look at our question, 35% of you that said the storage system is connected with both fiber and copper. Interestingly enough, fiber channel in the name is called fiber channel, but it actually can use both fiber and copper. It's kind of weird that we call it fiber channel. I guess copper channel doesn't sound very good, does it? So fiber channel can use both copper and fiber. Fiber channel over Ethernet. Ethernet obviously can use both copper and fiber, so that would not be the right answer. 16% of you said database sizes exceed 2 gigabytes. Well, that's just a normal database. In fact, that's a small one. So that's certainly not an issue with Fiber Channel over Ethernet. 13% of you said drives will store long-term backups. Well, drives may store long-term backups, very commonly done on a backup system connected with Fiber Channel and connected to it with Fiber Channel over Ethernet. So that's not the answer. Drive sizes vary across systems. That's absolutely common as well. So you would certainly find that in a Fiber Channel environment. The one thing that would not be associated with the Fiber Channel over Ethernet is B. Remote users access the database across the WAN. Because Fiber Channel over Ethernet is a layer 2 protocol, it is not routable. You would not commonly access it across a wide area network that requires almost always some type of routing to get between point A and point B. So when we talk about the things that would not be associated with Fiber Channel over Ethernet, anytime you're routing, that is definitely not associated with Fiber Channel over Ethernet. Remote users accessing across the WAN would definitely have to route. So those 24% of you that answered B are absolutely correct. That is something you would not find associated with Fiber Channel over Ethernet. Well done with that one. I think we got time for one more. So let's fit one more into this mix. And this question is another one we have to know these acronyms on. There's a lot of acronyms on the Security Plus exam. Which of the following would best describe an ARO? Which of the following would best describe an ARO? This is one where we have to know what an ARO is, but I'm not asking you what an ARO is. I'm asking you what describes it. So would it be A, it will cost $100,000 to replace all of the laptops that will be stolen this year? Would it be B, a day without electrical power will cost the company $50,000? Would it be C, it takes 7 days to completely replace a damaged HVAC system? Would it be D, the software maintenance costs of our operating systems are $15,000 a year? Or would it be E, there is a 1% chance of experiencing an outage due to a natural disaster? Which of those would best describe an ARO? If you know what ARO is, then you can answer that by going to professormesser.com/QA. Do not answer in the chat room. Do not give hints in the chat room. You want to instead best describe an ARO. Answer that one. Maybe some of you know what these are. There's a number of these acronyms that you need to be very familiar with on the Security Plus exam. They are well documented in the exam objectives, which you can get by going to professormesser.com/objectives. You can get your hands on those exam objectives as well. You should have those exam objectives. If you're in this live stream, you're watching this video on replay, you're doing anything associated with the Security Plus, go out to CompTIA or just go to Google, type in CompTIA exam objectives. That will get you there. Make sure you download the Security Plus objectives. They should be your checklist for everything. And indeed, ARO is well represented in the checklist. Let's see how we did with this one. Again, we're a little torn. We do have one that is number one. It's E. There's a 1% chance of experiencing an outage due to a natural disaster. 36% of you, 35%, 36% said, yeah, that's the right answer. 28% said A, it will cost $100,000 to replace all the laptops that will be stolen this year. And 20% said the software and maintenance costs of our operating systems are $15,000 a year. And only 8% each chose B, a day without electrical power will cost the company $50,000, and it takes 7 days to completely replace a damaged HVAC. You do not want to do that, by the way. So let's talk about ARO. The ARO is part of these risk calculations that you need to know for the exam. Calculating risk, policy procedures, dealing with security are a big part of an IT security professional's world. You have to be able to look at policy and then implement a security plan based on the policies for your organization. So this is one where you do need to understand risks. And an ARO is an annualized rate of occurrence. It's a likelihood that something is going to happen over a year because it's annualized. So during a 12-month period, how likely is this to happen? That's what we're going to find. A good example I gave here is how likely is it that a hurricane will hit where you happen to be? If you're in Montana, you probably have a very small number compared to where I live in Florida, where the percentage is probably a lot more. Not probably. The percentage is definitely a lot more in Florida than it is Montana, because you have to now make decisions about how you're going to keep things safe, how you're going to keep the network running, what you're going to do if a hurricane hits. Do you think the people in Montana are spending a lot of time creating a security plan about hurricanes? Probably not. What if their data, though, was kept on a set of servers in Orlando? Well, then probably they might be thinking about, what are we going to do with this data that's on our servers in Orlando? It makes a big difference. And that's why when you're planning for anything dealing with risk, you need to understand all of the different variables, and the annualized rate of occurrence is one of those variables that comes from the Exam Objectives 2.1 and my video calculating risk. So if we look at the different options available, the one option here that really talks about the likelihood of something happen is not A or B or C or D. Indeed, it's E. There is a 1% chance of experiencing an outage due to a natural disaster. Exactly the example I gave in my video. The 38% of you that answered E got that one absolutely right. That is an annualized rate of occurrence. Well done with understanding those. It's one of those things you have to know. Make sure you understand all of those risk calculations on your exam. Well, we've gone through another hour of Security Plus questions, but there's plenty more to come next month. I've got another Security Plus study group planned for July the 19th. Now, if you're watching this on a replay, it's after July the 19th of 2017, or you just aren't sure when the next live event is going to be, you can always go to professormesser.com/calendar, and you can see exactly when the next live event is going to be, whether it's A Plus or Network Plus or the Security Plus study groups. It's a great place to go to know when all of those will be. Well, don't forget that my course notes and information about those can be found at professormesser.com/securitycn for Security Plus course notes, SecurityCN. Of course, you can follow everything we're doing on the YouTube, on the Book of Faces, on the Twitter at professormesser.com/YouTube/Twitter/Facebook/Instagram/ whatever it is. Just type in something and see if it gets there. And if I'm not there, tell me you want me there. You can, of course, don't forget, there's 10% off vouchers available. Don't pay full price for your vouchers. Go to professormesser.com/vouchers. And my thanks again to GTS Learning for their discounts available on their live labs. You can find out all about that at professormesser.com/seclabs. Well, we've come to the end of another study group, but there's plenty more to talk about. In the second hour, I'm going to be opening up the phone lines in our Security Plus study group after show. And until next month, then, join us again. We've got plenty more Security Plus questions on the next Security Plus study group. Thank you for joining us here. Thank you for answering questions. Stick around for the after show. We'll see you over there, and we'll see you next time on the Security Plus study group. Well, that is quite a bit. Being able to work through all of those different questions. So let's get the phone lines up and running with these, with those pieces. Let's see. Yeah, that was quite a bit. That last one, dealing with numbers, tends to get people thrown off a bit. Tends to get me thrown off a bit in working with those. Let's get the phone lines up and running. I'll get a show going here. I'll call in. The call-in line is available on professormesser.com/live. I usually have a lower third here, and my lower third is missing. It's not there anymore. Where did it go? I don't know. I'll have to find it next time. I think I know what I did. I think I deleted it accidentally. So let's get this up and running. I need to call in to this show so that you can call into this show, and then we'll talk about phone lines and phone numbers and all that nonsense and all those things. So what do I do next? I type in a thing here. I go to that and type this thing in.
Enter your 6-digit PIN number.
All right. There we go. How about that? Welcome. Well, thank you. It's good to be here. Thank you for having me. I'm going to keep talking. Yes, you are. You're just going to keep talking. And I know. Okay. Thank you for that. All right. The phone lines are there. You will find them on professormesser.com/live. They're also available. I'll give you what they are. You can call in at the number 855-785-7545. That number again, 855-785-RJ45. If you're on Skype, you can call in for free. You put a +1, and it's no Skype minutes. So wherever you are in the world, you could even call in from there, 855-785-7545. Just put a +1 at the beginning and being able to work through that. Yes, sorry, Brian, the ARO, the Army Research Office. None of those answers applied to the Army Research Office. That doesn't make sense at all. Why is the Army Research Office on the Security Plus exam objectives? That doesn't make sense at all. Being able to work through there. Being able to have software managers, $150,000 a year. That's not an occurrence. That's not something that occurs. That's something you pay out. It's not something that happens. You're not guessing that something is going to happen, and being able to work through there. Besides the objective breakdown of this the updated Security Plus stay notes, any other changes to the content? There's no changes to the content in there. They're exactly the same course notes because the objectives haven't changed. SY0401 has not changed since it was released, thankfully. So all of even though there's now a printed version of the Security Plus course notes, there are no real changes to the content. In fact, if you have already purchased the Security Plus course notes, the latest version that has now the introduction, there's an index that's a much more advanced version of it. You can download it anytime. You can always check in to see the latest version by logging into your member login, professormesser.com/members, and you'll be able to do that as well. Let's talk on the phone lines. Let's pull up the phone lines here. And let's go to the 336 area code. Are you there, caller? What's your name?
Hey, Professor. How's it going? This is Christopher.
Hey, Christopher. Thanks for calling.
Hey, I just wanted to call in and say that I'm taking my exam on Friday. I have all your course notes. I've been watching you for years. Just wanted to call in and say thank you for all that you do. And had a great study group today. I'm feeling pretty confident about my test on Friday. So I definitely, just a big thank you to you and to everything you've been doing for the past few years.
Absolutely. Great. I'm glad to hear it. Is there part of the exam objectives that's perhaps giving you more of a heartburn than any of the others?
I would definitely say that maybe being able to identify like looking at a network diagram and being able to understand the type of attack that's going on. I saw a few performance-based questions. Obviously, I think that's a lot of people might struggle with that. So, maybe just being able to identify what type of malicious attack is going on just simply by looking at a network diagram. And I say that because some of the performance-based questions that I've, reviewed myself, sometimes it seems like they, like man in the middle might be the answer to every one of them almost. So, not literally, but you
Right.
get what I'm saying. So looking at a network diagram and trying to discern what type of attack is going on, I would say that is probably my weakest point.
I've tried to do that in some of my videos, and I'm working on the 501 content right now. And a lot of the newer videos, I'm extending the explanations on a number of these things and trying to show it graphically on a network so people can get a better idea of that. Because if you've never worked on a network before, and a lot of people taking their Security Plus may not have a lot of networking background, and then you're layering on top of that some relatively advanced security attack techniques, it can be almost overwhelming. So I'm trying to break it out into its smallest pieces as well. I can understand how that would be a challenge.
Well, I would definitely say, I do feel, fairly comfortable with at least, attempting it. And obviously I'm familiar with man-in-the-middle attacks and SQL injections and, different attacks like that. So, I do feel fairly comfortable. I would just say, that would probably be my weakest point.
That's
but your
great.
videos and your course notes and everything have been outstanding. So, I really appreciate it. And, hopefully Friday I'll have a passing score to report, hopefully.
That's fantastic. Best of luck with that. Let us know how it goes, and good luck on that exam.
Yes, sir. Thanks, Professor. Have a great day.
You too. Thanks, Christopher. That's one thing that you never know until you go in to take the exam how it's going to go. Some exams I've been able to walk into and you just breeze through. It's just, I can't believe it was that easy. I must have done a good job studying. But whenever I start looking at some of these exams I've taken, there was one exam back in the day that was the CNX series of exams, Certified Network Expert, not CNE, because at the time there was a CNE, it's CNX. And there was a CNX exam on Ethernet, aced it. CNX exam on Token Ring, I killed it. CNX exam on FDDI, FDDI, not FDDI, FDDI. Today, FDDI is something completely different. This is FDDI, the network, not FDDI, the entertainer. And that FDDI, I did great on that exam. But I'd worked with Token Ring and Ethernet and FDDI. Not worked with FDDI, but I worked with FDDI. And the exam that really got me was cabling. Of all things, I took a network cabling exam, failed it. I don't mean like I almost didn't pass. I just miserable on network cabling, which at that time was fiber and copper, Cat5, and there was some fiber in there as well. And then there was, so I went back, I studied, took it again, failed it again, but only just barely. I was only just barely awful on that one, just miserable. And then finally took it, studied again, went back the third time and finally passed it. But you just don't know what you're going to get until you finally sit down in that exam and you're faced with it. CompTIA has their own flavor of questions, their own style that they tend to use. The Security Plus exam tends to be very wordy in their questions. They try to set up a scenario and then give you a question about that scenario. A lot of the questions I give you on the study groups don't have a lot of pretense to them. I'm not giving you, Bob works in a network where network security is very important and is setting up WPA2. Which of these are an important part of WPA2? I just kind of cut out the first part of this, but they make you read through all of those things to kind of figure out what the scenario happens to be. And sometimes there is important information in the setup on the question that you really need to use on the answer to what's there, and being able to work through all of those. I tend to find that my biggest problems are working through those wordy, very wordy questions because I always miss something, I always skip it. And that's why I tell people, go through all the multiple choice questions first, circle back to the performance-based questions, and you'll probably have a number of questions at the end that are flagged. So you can mark them as you go. If you aren't quite sure of a question, I just flag it. And then if I really know it 100%, I don't bother flagging it. Like I definitely got that one right. And then at the end, it presents you with a page that shows what you answered on all of the questions. And then it tells you if you flagged any of them, and you can very quickly choose a question to go back to and look at. What I tend to do, though, is I go back through every single question. I start the beginning of the multiple choice. Whether I flagged it or not, I just go back through it and read it again. And I'm surprised every time I do this that I'll read a question again and go, wait a second, that was not the question I read the first time. This is a completely different question than what I thought I read the first time. This is written to be something completely different. This is not the right answer. This one is the right answer. And had I not gone through these questions again, I go through every question again, not just the flagged ones. Had I not gone through all those questions again, I would have never identified that there was something there that I missed, that I completely read it wrong. And usually it's in the very beginning of the exam. The adrenaline is flowing. You've sat down. You've started the exam. You're having to read the questions 7 times before any of the words are sinking in. Always a challenge. Let's go back to the phones. The 504 area code. Are you there, caller? What's your name? I hear you. I hear me. And I hear you. Are you there, caller? Hi, what's your name?
Yes, I'm here.
Hey, what's your name?
My name is Corey Toussaint. Let me mute because okay. My name is Corey Toussaint, and I'm taking the test Monday.
Oh, okay.
And I had some, I know, and I'm a little stressed out about it. And I mean, I already have prospective employers like waiting on me to actually finish the test, but I wanted to ask about event IDs. When I start to study event IDs, there's like 100,000 of them. And I'm like, what event IDs do I need to actually memorize and study, and what exactly are they?
You should know all of the event IDs that are specifically listed in the CompTIA exam objectives. Fortunately, no specific event ID is listed in the exam objectives, which is great. So that's a relief. Generally speaking, event IDs, and the term event ID is a Windows type term. It's one that comes from the event manager. If you look in the event viewer inside of Windows in the control panel, the administrative tools, you'll see the event viewer is in there. The event viewer, anything that happens in Windows has an event ID associated with it. And as you can imagine, there are tens of thousands of possible things that can happen inside of Windows. So you obviously do not need to memorize tens of thousands of event IDs or even any event ID to know what these happen to be. But it's important that you know what they are, because whenever you're trying to troubleshoot a problem, it's like an error code. It's something you could say, I got an event ID 17 in this system. What can I do to resolve that particular event ID? So you need to understand that these are unique events that occur. It's a number that you give to it. There's probably also an explanation that's provided in your event viewer for that event ID. You got event ID 17. The system has experienced an issue with this thing. So that you can go through the list of those and at least see, for a human being, I know what that event ID happens to be. Do you need to memorize specific event IDs and the explanations of what they are for the exam? No. They're not. I say no because they're not listed in the exam objectives. Could you get a question that asks you what a specific event ID is? Well, yes, because CompTIA said in their exam objectives, we could ask you anything that's even not in this list of objectives. But they haven't tended to do that. CompTIA stays very, very, very close to the exam objectives. And you will find that they very, very few of the questions will ever deviate from the exam objectives. And in that way, that's why I always tell people, if you know everything in the exam objectives, you're going to pass your exam, because they're asking you questions that come directly from this enormous list of objectives. And if you're smart enough to know all of it, then you're going to be smart enough to pass the exam. Don't worry about anything that goes outside the scope. And I realize you're going to get books and online resources and all kinds of things that will ask you questions that seem to be outside the scope of what's in the exam objectives. I don't know why these books and online systems do this. Why would you ask something of someone that has nothing to do with what's in the exam objectives? I have no idea. I guess they think it's important, but it's not important for the exam. It may be important for you in normal administration of these systems, but just focus on what's on the objectives and you're going to be fine.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for calling. Good luck on Monday. I bet it's going to go great. Thanks for calling. The exam objectives really are everything. Let me pull up the exam objectives. In fact, let me pull up the SY0 501 and 401 exam objectives. Big difference between all of those, by the way. Let's see if I can find them. Where did I put? Oh, there's the training course. There it is. The SY0 401 exam objectives. Let's pull these up and have a look. Here they are. Here's the exam objectives, SY0 401. Scroll. This is all the things in here. In fact, they tell you this list of examples provided in bulleted format are not exhaustive lists. Yeah, they are. It may not be super exhaustive, but it's pretty exhaustive. That's a pretty big list. But they do tell you other technologies pertaining may also be included on the exam, although not listed or covered in this objectives document, but they stay pretty close to the document. If they ask one or two questions that's outside this scope, you're still going to pass the exam. I went through this 401 document and I color-coded it to the things that in green are carried over to the 501 exam. In red are no longer on the exam. And I think the purple are things that need to be updated for the new exam. I think that's what I was doing. So you can see there's still a lot of green, but as I scroll through here, there's a lot of red in this document. There's a ton of stuff that was just not there anymore. It's not in the new exam. This was my first pass through. This may not be 100% right, but it's pretty close. Look at all the red. Look at how little green there is. I'm saying this as someone who has to create new content. Like every place that's red is gone and very few greens are popping up. So let me reverse this for you. Let me show you the 501 objectives where I've done the reverse. I have taken, and 501 exam objectives can be downloaded right now. Even though the exam's not available yet, you can download the 501 objectives from the CompTIA website. You just can't take the exam yet. So I did the same thing on this one. Anything green is already available. So you can see section 1.1, not bad. Section 1.2, most of this still in here, and then it all starts to go south. There's an entire section of new content, entire HAPSA sections of new content, another big section. Anything yellow is new content. So you could see just enormous differences. Somebody in one of the chat rooms I was in this past week said, they're about the same. They're not even close to being the same. They're not even remotely similar in the content. They're both about security. That's similar. And then nothing else from that point on. It's just not similar at all. Look at all the yellow. I have so much work to do. Finally, some green. Oh, finally, with those. But you can see there's a lot that you're going to have to work on. If you shift gears, if you're working on your 401 and then you have to shift gears and move to the 501, which of course isn't going to happen until next year after this. It's more than 12 months away at this recording. But if you're right at the edge and you've been studying for the 401 and you run out of time, you're going to have to really restart. So you don't want to be in that position. Pick one or the other and go with it. I don't find that the newer exam is any more difficult than the older one. I don't find the content is more difficult. It's updated. There are differences in how it's arranged. It's a completely different arrangement of data, completely different format and how things are arranged on the exam. But there's not really any difficulty differences. I think at a difficulty level, they seem to be similar. We obviously won't know that for sure until the exam is live. And then we'll be able to tell, is there going to be differences? We'll have something available here. Well, we'll know. I have a feeling, though, these will be very similar in difficulty level. So it will be the same forward somersault off the 10-meter platform as on both the 401 and the 501. Same level of difficulty. In chat room, people are saying, will new course notes be provided with the next test? Yes, there'll be new course notes. There will be a new video series for the 501 that will be made available. So I'm committing to you right now, absolutely. I'm working right now on the new 501 content. I've got plenty of 501 video content that it's in the can, ready to be shot. And ready to go. It's really pre-production is what's happening now. Once pre-production is done for every single video, I really make the course notes next so that everybody can get their hands on the course notes. And then I sit down, I shoot all the videos. Just boom, 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 boom. I've already got them built. I can just sit in front of the camera and shoot tons of them all the time and edit and post and shoot and edit and post and shoot and edit and post. And I just do that for months, literally for months. And then finally they're online. That's all I do in my life is that. And then those will be available. Will they all be available when the exam is released in October? Well, it's June now. July, August, September, October. I'll have a good chunk of it done by then. I might have at least all the pre-production done. I'll certainly have videos starting up about that point. Maybe not all of them, but we'll be pretty close, I think. Might even get all of them done. I guess it really depends on how much work I can get done in that time frame. We'll know more as it gets close to that. I don't have a formal production schedule. There's not a group of people that work here doing this. This is me. I just put a lot of screens in front of me and hopefully it gets done. That's kind of what it takes when you're one person. You just surround yourself with tons of radiation and you hope for the best. I blame that for most of the problems that you can see are happening right here is all this radiation. But it's one of those things where I don't know how fast this is going to go. I don't have a boss telling me how fast I have to go. Well, I do, but she's not involved in the production process. This is something that when it gets done, I want to do them right. I spend as much time as I can making the highest quality video that I can. I don't create anything that's good enough. I don't think anybody who is studying for the exam deserves good enough. I think you need the best I could possibly create, and sometimes that takes a little bit longer. But that's my philosophy. I want to create content that's really, really good and one that you can use. So this is something that's going to stick around for at least 3 years. So I want it to be good enough for anybody to be able to use. I want to change this perspective. I think we are changing the perspective that things that are free can't be good. I think things that are free could be better than the things you would pay for. How would that work? Well, we have to spend a lot of time on the front end developing these, creating the right kind of content, creating these diagrams of the network that show the attacks as they're coming through. And I'm creating a lot of new ones too. So you can really see how's that attack getting onto the system. I want to demonstrate those. Let me show you a cross-site script. Let's type one in right here. Let's show a database injection. Here we go. Those types of things are interesting because if you can see it's someone doing a database injection, you know, oh, that's how they got into that database. Right there. They went into that login screen and typed some text in, and now they're inside that database. It's remarkable when you see it on the screen like that. Whoa, that's how they did it. And of course, there's all these new attacks that are in the 501 exam series, things like clickjacking that weren't in the 401 exam. Clickjacking absolutely was not in the 401 exam, absolutely in the new one. And what's interesting is that these are such new attack types. There's, I think last month, maybe this month on Android, they found a clickjacking where somebody was able to take advantage of the Android operating system and layer an invisible layer on top of the screen. So when you type things in, it's watching what you type because they kind of put this sensor layer right on top of it. And they can grab your username, they can grab your password, all by watching you type, all built into this. Other attacks that people don't think about that are built into the drivers of their system. And all of these things that are happening right now, things like ransomware. What a time for ransomware. Happened last month where all of these Windows systems suddenly attacked with a worm that put a Trojan that loaded ransomware. So there's 3 things that happened there that you need to understand. How did that happen? How did it get into the system automatically? What did it do once it got there? And then what did it load up? You know, these are challenging problems that are happening right now. It's all part of these Security Plus objectives. I hear all the time in some of these chats that I will be in online, conversations that are happening on other websites, where they're saying, the Security Plus exam just doesn't apply to what's happening right now. Like this is all that's happening right now is security. What was it last week that we suddenly got notice that the NSA had a backdoor into all of our home routers, into Netgear and Linksys, and they were just able to, any home router, they could get into it. It's a 0 day. Nobody knew it was there. And suddenly it's released that that's there. So of course now all of those manufacturers are having to go back and update their code to close the back door. But how many of those are not going to be closed? Probably certainly as many as the people who did not update their Windows systems to prevent the ransomware from getting in. So that becomes a little bit more of a challenge to really understand what's going on with that. In the chat room, Carlos is asking about logs and having to deal with looking through log files. I can tell you, as a security professional, this will be a big part of your job, looking at logs, because there are logs on your firewall. There's logs in your router. There's logs in your switches. There's logs in your intrusion prevention system. There's logs in your email servers. A lot of what I do day to day is look at logs. There are many different ways to go through and look at the logs that are coming at you. But every single one of those log types is different. It's structured differently. It's a different kind of information inside of it. You may be given a log on your exam. Say, here's a log. Tell me something that's in here. That would be a pretty good exam question, I think. So it's useful if you can go into Windows, for instance, and look at the logs. I was in my Mac OS system this week, and I just popped open the system logs to look at it, and there were these huge number of errors flying by. So many errors, I couldn't see the rest of the logs. Hundreds and hundreds of lines every second of errors. And it's because of a problem with my keychain that was on my system. I deleted some empty keychains and the errors went away. So I had to look at the log, examine what the error was, even tried Googling the error and didn't get a lot of really useful direction. All it really said is, yeah, your keychain's messed up. What do you mean messed up? What do I do? And what people will do is the obvious thing. I just deleted my keychain and everything works after that. That's great, but I don't want to delete my whole keychain. I'd like to keep the things in there that are there. I just want to remove the problem. So it took a little more research to get into it. You need to understand those different log types. Go into your operating system. If you're running Windows, go into the Windows Event Viewer. If you're running Mac OS, look at the logs that are in your system logs. If you're running Linux, go to your var logs directory and look at all of the logs that are there. Each one of those logs will have a different format. There'll be different kind of information. There is all kinds of good stuff in there too. You'll sometimes find some of these irritating problems that you'll run into. And in Windows, you have some other options available to you as well. Microsoft has a ton of great resources available to look at all the different processes that are going on. And let me find the one that I used a lot. I use a lot in Windows to find these really difficult to really understand problems. One of my favorites is Process Monitor. This is from Microsoft sysinternals. I think it runs on pretty much anything Vista and higher. And what it does, it shows you everything going on. These are awful screenshots, so you can't really see what's going on there. But it shows you everything going on inside your operating system. Every application, every service, anything that happens. In fact, it's almost too much information, but it shows you everything that happens. Talk about a crazy log file to look through. This creates in a second thousands and thousands and thousands of lines to go through. And fortunately, you can filter things out if you only want to see certain things. But I had a Windows system that would just keep hanging. It would stutter, and then it would go back to normal, and then it would stutter and go back to normal. And I tried to find it. So I started this, waited for it to stutter, stopped the log, went back to see what was causing this to stutter. And it was a permissions problem in my registry. There was a section of registry that this application was trying to read. It was not able to read that section because it was locked for some reason. I don't know why. And so it would error. And while it was erroring out, it just waited there. The whole system just waited. And I was able to just remove the permissions that were inside of the registry, remove the lock that was in the registry. And suddenly I got a brand new system, it seemed. It now runs 100% faster without these delays that were being caused by that. Would never have seen them had I not seen this process monitor view. You can often find a lot of problems with applications and startup processes all by using that. It's one of my favorite log filtering functions, log viewing functions. But even that has its own challenges. A lot of stuff in there, have no idea what it means. Have no clue what 90% of what's in there means. Maybe a little bit less than that, but that's probably accurate. 90%, there's tons of things going by that you're like, I don't know what that is. What you're really looking for is something that says error, problem, delay, issue, filtered out by the application having the issue. Maybe you can find it, Google it out. That's where you really need to focus your effort on these. And so when CompTIA talks to you in the exam objectives about understanding logs and how they work, you need to understand how people use them, how syslog operates, what a syslog consolidation tool can provide you, what the information in the log might look like. But once you look through 2 or 3 or 4 different log types, you'll see some similarities. You'll see that there was a source. You'll see there's a log number. You'll see that there's a long description. You'll see that there's maybe an error line or a line that says things are working. And that's kind of similar depending on what logs you look at. I look at on my systems the logs that are in for my web servers because people are coming to my website all the time and creating problems for me. So I have to go through the logs and find those. And I use a logging application, LNAV, LNAV. To do LNAV is just the best log file navigator, LNAV, and it is just awesome. Color codes things. I can search very quickly. It consolidates multiple log files into one single view on my screen. It's all text-based, so it's very fast. So if you're this works in Windows and Linux and Mac OS. It's a great log viewer, and it's pretty nice. Such great capabilities inside of that. So I use Log File Navigator, LNAV, all the time. And you can set up LNAV and define your own log format, which is what I had to do on my website because I'm using a lot of reverse proxies So I have to convert back IP addresses so I can really see what the original source was, but now they're located in a different place than the default log file would have them. So I was able to customize the log file parser and then put it into LNAV, and now I'm able to read all of those. So really, really useful information. So obviously for the Security Plus exam, you don't need to go that deep. You don't need to know how to set up the parser for the log files and be able to pull those out. That part's not important, but you need to understand the process and be able to make that happen. It's one thing that really does come in handy. I've got a couple of videos on logs. If you get into security, log files are going to be pretty important. And I've said this before, and I probably it's worth saying again. LNAV is not similar to Notepad++, by the way. It's not even close. It's not a Notepad first, not a text editor, and it's made to view logs. That's all it does. Viewing logs and searching for information. Being able to hit a number and jump forward that number of minutes or backward that number of minutes or forward that number of hours or backward that number. It's remarkable. I should do a video on LNAV. It's so awesome. But I was talking about something and going somewhere with that and redirected myself. If you're working in security, and I've said this before, and it's really important, managing log files is one of those things in security that tends to be put to the side because obviously the most important part of IT security is keeping things safe and configuring that new IPsec tunnel to the third party and making sure that those changes to the firewall have been updated and making sure that the IPS information is still available and make sure that we're scanning the right things. All of those are sort of the normal day-to-day, but there's this huge, massive amount of data in these log files that contain really important information. And a lot of organizations don't take advantage of that, probably because it's so difficult to manage those logs because it is such a huge amount of data. You really do have to have a strategy. You have to purchase equipment to act as your log file consolidation tool. You need software that's able to parse those logs. You need to be able to have storage to collect these logs and keep them over a long period of time. A day's worth of logs in a firewall are going to be gigabytes of data. And what about the IPS? And what about the routers? And what about the switches? And what about the servers? All of those are going to be important data types, especially if you have a breach. You're going to want to hit that point in the logs and know what happened before that breach, what happened after that breach. And then how can I view all of this information in a single cohesive way that really tells me what's going on? Can it collect and provide me with metadata that I can use to give me longer term charts that can show me how many people are logging in, where are they logging in from, where are the different problems that people are running into, how many rules on my firewall are blocking traffic coming through, what is being blocked, where's that blocked traffic coming from? Those are things that can be incredibly important for you as a security professional. And we often don't think about logging until after the fact, or it's done sort of halfway because there was no real strategy put in place. If you're someone who can put together a cohesive, well-engineered logging system that provides reports that are actual good, decent reports that can really help you do your job, you could do that for a living. You could go from place to place to place and charge large amounts of dollars to be able to make that happen because a lot of people just don't have that, and they really should. It's really a useful set of skills to have. Just not a lot of people do that. And I see some of the great logging tools that are out there that are just not used enough. Or in the chat room, as DLS 7227 says, yeah, or until you have an audit. When the auditors show up and say, what happened on that last night? Oh, I don't know. There's logs somewhere. Oh, the logs, we'll go to the firewall and look at the logs. Oh, it only keeps logs for an hour. We don't have a lot of space in our firewall to keep logs. So I can't tell you what happened last night. That's not where you want to be from a security perspective. That's a bad place to be. So in the chat room, B-Din says, you've not started Security Plus. Well, welcome. This will be fun. Is there a section on keeping network login/password safe? There are many sections on keeping login/password safe. We talked a little bit about some of that today when we talked about different methods of login, things you need to know, the different factors. And there's all kinds of talk of different factors of logins in the Security Plus and what those factors should look like. Splunk is very good for logging analysis. It's exceptional for logging analysis, actually. It's my go-to is Splunk. Splunk is it is one of the best logging tools out there. It is expensive but it's worth it. It's one of those where you're paying a premium, but you're getting a premium product. And it's exceptional for doing reports. There's so many third-party plugins for it. It's just a great logging tool. And it does a lot more than just security. So you can have a Splunk setup that's logging all the security information, but it's also logging server performance and switch information and database details. And everybody in the IT organization could use that data. The people doing databases would love to get a database dashboard. The people handling the servers would love to get a server dashboard. Where's the disk space getting low? How is CPU utilization? How many people are connected to these devices? That's good information to have. Doesn't help much from a security perspective, but the server team would sure like to know about that. It becomes really useful. So when I start looking at the exam objectives, make sure you go through them. Just don't get too mired in any one of them. So things like event logs and knowing the event IDs, I could not imagine memorizing a ton of different event IDs. It's not in the exam objectives. Don't bother memorizing it. Conversely, port numbers are an incredibly important part of security. They deal directly with firewalls on a server and a workstation. You need to know every port number that's listed in the exam objectives. Now, what you don't want to do, and I've seen this, is certain books will have pages and pages and pages of port numbers. I guess they needed to fill space. I don't know why they did that, because CompTIA tells you exactly the port numbers you need to know for the exam. They're in the exam objectives. They are written down. You need to know port 80. You need to know port 23. You need to know port 22. They go through the list. You'll know exactly what you need to know. Now, when you start working with these, you're in security and you're working with firewalls and you're working with these technologies, port numbers will become commonplace. You'll just know them. They're stuck in your head. But when you're just starting out, like you're working on the Security Plus exam, you've never done this before, it seems like, why do I have to memorize these? I could just Google them. Well, to be fair, you could just Google everything. Why do you learn how to drive a car? You could just Google it. Okay, what do I do first? Well, it says to find the key. Oh, where did I find the? Here it is. Here's the key. What do I do next? What do I do after I find the key? Oh, I put it into the ignition. All right, there we go. What happens now? I turn the key. Oh, okay. Do I release it? What happens? I guess these days I push the button. It's a little different now. I push the button. It starts the car. Put your foot on the brake. Push the button. You know, there's a reason we memorize these things. You're in a meeting. You're trying to make a decision about what you're going to do for uptime and availability should a hurricane hit. And you need to connect to your disaster recovery location that's in Minnesota. And how are we going to do that? How do we set it up? Well, we could set up with firewalls. I'm not sure how to do that. I could Google it. I'll Google how we could set up that firewall, and we can meet next week and we can talk about it. Like, no, we need to do this today. We need to do this right now in this meeting. How do we do that? There's reasons we memorize this information, because it's just what we do for our jobs. It's just normal part of what we do. And we have to know these. Port numbers just become automatic after a while. Just like memorizing birthdays and phone numbers, it's just automatic. So don't worry too much. You do have to memorize them, though. So if you haven't worked with them before, it does seem kind of like rote memorization, and it is. But don't worry. It's memorization that you will use. Everything in the Security Plus certification exam, it's all valid content. It's things that security professionals are doing today. This is not old or played out or information you'll never run into. This is good information. So grab those exam objectives, use them as a checklist. You could see mine. I used a PDF editor, and I was able to highlight different parts of it. And that's what I do when I'm working through exam objectives. So once I know something, I can mark it off. I kind of know it, and I can make it a different color to turn it yellow instead of green, and step through all of them. And that way, when I need to cycle back through and what do I really need to study, okay, here's the yellow parts that I really need to study instead of the greens. I got the greens down. Let's work on the yellows. So it just depends on how you study the best is your strategy with these things. One of the challenges is that Security Plus, as we already got in the phone call today, is something that some people use as the base of what you need to know to get this job. So a lot of people who are taking the Security Plus, you're not getting your A+. A lot of you don't worry about getting the Network Plus. You're starting with the Security Plus exam. So this is a good place to start, but it's also, you're layering on top of a lot of things that you should probably be very familiar with already. So you may find a little more of a struggle if you're jumping into Security Plus as your first certification, but it can absolutely be done. People do it all the time on my website. They show up and say, I had to take this Security Plus so I could get a job doing this thing. I don't have any other certifications. I don't have really a lot of IT experience, and they were able to pass it. So if you're in the same situation, you're trying to figure out that piece as well, don't worry. People do it all the time. You can do it as well. It's not as bad as you might think. One of the nice things about Security Plus is it's very much process-oriented information, understanding what you do in a certain situation. There is some technology, but it's really understanding how to apply these different technologies to achieve a particular security goal. It's not like you have to type a lot of things in at a command line. In fact, on the Security Plus exam, you don't have to type in anything on the command line, which I think is going to be different in the 501. If I look at my 501 exam objectives and flipping through these, did that change? Have I gotten down to that yet? I'm looking at all the yellow and depressing myself with all the work that I have to do over the next months. As I flip through here, I think it may still be the same, that there isn't much to type in at the command line. Don't have to know any command lines to do this. You still have to know a lot of these cryptographic protocols, authentication protocols. I will say that they are arranged a lot better on the new exam. There's just tons of new things you need to know on the new exam, which is good. Security changes over time, probably more than Network Plus, certainly, probably as much as A+, maybe even a little bit more, because of all of the new types of attacks that have suddenly appeared. Well, then it makes sense that there would be in there as well. It's just a important part of this. Good tip in the chat room from R Richards 032 is to grab VirtualBox. There are Linux distributions that you can download and immediately pull up a virtual machine. There are Windows distributions at modern.ie. Modern.ie is the shortcut that will get you to the Microsoft website, where they will have lab versions of virtual machines available that you can download immediately for practically any virtual environment. So if you're running VirtualBox or VMware Workstation or Parallels or whatever it happens to be on your operating system, they've got a downloadable operating system. You can start right now and run Windows 10, run Windows 7, run Windows 8, and you're running. I don't know if they have Windows 7 there anymore now. I'm thinking about it. They might. I think it may just be Windows 8, Windows 10 at the moment. They keep changing it. But modern.ie gives you Windows, and you can load that up. You can start the firewall. You can try communicating through the device to something else. It's a great way to try out some security features without changing your system. That's not what you want to do, is mess up your own operating system. So modern.ie is a good way to do that with Windows, and there's so many Linux distributions out there on the internet tubes that it's not even worth pointing to any one particular place. Just find the thing you want to do. There's a number of great firewalls that are out there if you want to do this yourself. Of course, the live labs from GTS Learning have that set up already, but you could do it yourself. You could set up a VM here and load up a Windows device. Can I talk to that device? Can I access the firewall? Can I look at the logs? They're all in there. All that information's available. It's one of those things that security, especially in Linux and Mac OS, maybe not so much in Windows, it's getting a little better, but a lot of the tools and the utilities were created in Linux, so it helps to have a Linux knowledge so you can load up some of those utilities and try them out. There's a few there that run in Windows. WebGoat is a good one to use. So if you want to try some of your own database injections, you want to try some of your own cross-site scripts, it's useful to have a vulnerable system available to try these on. And WebGoat, kind of an odd, funny name, from WebGoat from OWASP, will be a very good thing to load up. It's effectively a Java virtual machine that is vulnerable. It's a system that you can connect to through a web browser and be able to run and access and do your own database injections and see how that works. And they give you a step-by-step. So they'll show you, first they'll show you do this, and then you can look at the answer and they'll go, okay, well, here's what you would do step-by-step to make this work. You could also go out, if you don't want to do that yourself, go out to the YouTubes, just Google WebGoat, and you'll be able to see other people doing it for you. Some of them are good videos, some of them not so much on the good video side, but it's something anyway that you can get an idea from. Oh, that's how they did that. Oh, that's cross-site scripting. Oh, that's a certificate issue. That's this, that's that. It's a great way to go about doing it. So I recommend you look at those as well. I find that to be a very good way to, if you aren't quite sure what that is, that's a very good way to understand what that is. Somebody's showing you. It's a demonstration. It's something that gets you along further. And of course, I have demonstrations of those as well in my Security Plus course. So you can look at those videos. Watch me do a database injection. Oh, that's how it worked. And I'm really just showing you a front end to WebGoat, or there's a, what is the other operating system I'm using? It is, I have to type it in so I can remember, the DVWA, the gosh darn vulnerable web application. And that is a web application you use. So those two things should get you much further along. The DVWA and the WebGoat are great ways to load up effectively virtual systems that are awful. They're horrible. They're miserable with their security. They are wrought with problems, but it's not going to hurt your system. And it's a great way to test some of these things that you're trying to learn. Get that muscle memory. You've watched the video, you've read the book, now do it yourself. And those three things together are a great way to kind of combine together what you need to know to pass these exams. Well, I think that brings us to the end of another Security Plus study group. There's quite a lot that we could go through with tools and access and all those different pieces, but I think this gets you started. We've had a great Q&A today. Thank you for joining me for that. I would not be able to really do much Q&A unless you were there answering on your side. I think we had some good questions today. Of course, we have the other study group, the next Security Plus study group next month. Before that, I take a week off finally for this month, and then we're back to it with an A Plus study group, a Network Plus study group, and a Security Plus study group for July. You might want to join us for that. You can always find out when those are going to be at professormesser.com/calendar. And until then, I want to thank you for joining me, and we will see you next time on the Security Plus study group.